my God, it's 9:30 and magically like that, my mic turned on. I think that means I'm supposed to give a talk now. Welcome to the first inaugural VRDC. Yay! I'm on the advisory board and I'm super excited to be here. And of course that means I get the first slot in the morning. Volunteering as always for the hard duties. I hope that you all had a fantastic Halloween because I did, which means that I'm a little bit sleepy. So if I forget my place, forgive me, I was out partying in costume very recently. I went as a fox spirit. All right. So my talk today is called The Body is Back, and it's about talking about embodiment as a design surface for designers in VR and AR titles. I will introduce myself. My name is Robin Hunicke, and I am the co-founder, CEO, and designer at Funomena, an independent game studio here in San Francisco, just over at 5th and Harrison, right around the corner, in the middle of the construction. And if you didn't read the blurb, and just in case you were curious about who I am, before you spend a half an hour with me, I am a game designer and producer, and I have a background in computer science. I also teach at UC Santa Cruz. Up until yesterday, my last ship title was Journey, but I'm happy to say that Funomena released its first commercially playable game yesterday, World, for the Tango Fab 2 Pro phone. I'm not really going to talk that much about World today, although I will say that it comes from the mind of Keita Takahashi, one of my favorite game designers of all time, who is also a phenomenon here in San Francisco. And tomorrow at 10:15, Vu Ha, my colleague, will be presenting on that game in the morning session. And if you're into cute GIFs, I highly recommend that you take a peek at it. There will be many of them. World and our other games, Luna and Watam, share a common interest in the concept of play, which for thousands of years usually involved being outside in the dirt with other people, and then eventually moved indoors, doing things for fun, and then became part of our culture. If you look at classic scholars of play who've researched how it came to be, they have looked at everything from animal behavior and the ways that animals play to learn, religious ceremonies, theater, recess time on the playground, and even sports as common places where play is witnessed. And play has become something that we analyze and look at as a way of understanding how we learn and grow. Csikszentmihalyi in particular, focusing on flow, which is something that a lot of game designers know about and read about now, was really interested in the deep sense of play and interaction with a task that comes when you're in a flow state, right? So play was, for a very long time, something that involved physical body and flow state in the physical sense. And then, around the time that I was born, we invented these awesome things where you could sit and stare at a screen and press a bunch of buttons and play. This gave us the ability to play by ourselves, but to also play with our families. Always, though, looking at a screen and projecting the body that we have onto that screen and into the activity as it is being displayed to us in two-dimensional reality, sometimes cheated to be 3D. So for example, moving a car on a racetrack or moving a football player across a play field, jumping on platforms. Now, after this 40 years, we've been all the time thinking about what would it be like if we could just stick our face in it, and suddenly now that's available, and it's going to be commercially available for what I perceive to be is the rest of all time. As you can see from the images in this Google search, as opposed to the images in this Google search, we haven't quite decided what this experience really is, and half the images that you see are just sort of binocular vision images of a thing. And then some of it is like a person in a headset doing awkward stuff around other people. And then some of it is actually a person having, looks like kind of an orgasm with explosions in the background. There's a lot of those right now. We're not super great at selling the experience, but I'm assuming that you all know that it's amazing. I would even say that it's fucking amazing. And you know, the eyes, the ears, and in this case now the hands, the senses on our hands, can be engaged in really experiencing what we like to call presence. the psychological state or subjective perception in which, even though part of an individual's current experience is generated by and or filtered through human-made technology, part or all of the individual's perception fails to accurately acknowledge the role of technology in the experience. It's a kind of a strange way to define it, but I think it's interesting to think about it this way. Your body is being fooled into believing that what it is experiencing is real. And that means that we are engaging your body in a way that we really haven't ever before. We've always been engaging your mind and your ocular vision, and to some extent, your coordinated thumbs. But now we really are tricking your body. And this is creating a space where designers can and will explore how presence affect one's experience of playful content. This quote is actually from the International Society for Presence Research from 2000. At the same time that we're thinking about how presence influences gameplay, we're also seeing how presence may, in fact, influence education. There's a lot of stuff if you just Google VR and learning. We're doing a way better job, actually, of selling this, even though we haven't actually implemented any of it yet. It's very interesting to think about moving away from the blackboard and sitting down and actually, working in a virtual space on a task. The words that we use to describe this are body learning or self-determination in classrooms. And there's a huge interest in this, especially in underserved communities where education really sucks. Because the idea of moving into some kind of a technology that will suddenly lift the burden of years of forced curriculums and non-engaging, sort of learning situations is really compelling. And it's compelling for a very specific reason. When you look at Edgar Dale's hierarchy of how concrete or abstract experiences can be, which starts off at the very top at the most abstract as text or verbal and goes all the way down through field trips and demos to direct purposeful experience, the flow state that Csikszentmihalyi sort of researched in the 80s. And then you compare that to the pyramid that reflects how much of that stuff we retain, you see that in fact, engaging in a task or teaching others how to do something is the best learning experience. And sitting, listening to someone talk, which I'm doing to you right now, is the worst. So let's all just give ourselves a round of applause. Now, to be fair, you're all, I hope, engaged in the activity of creating VR, which is what makes this conversation more possible. If I was just lecturing at you and you'd never, used a VR headset, you had no idea, maybe some of you are in that space, I apologize, it'll fall a little bit flat. And as someone who teaches all the time now, I'm always striving to get into that space where I'm engaging the different parts of the brain through getting my students to do stuff like play outside. It's really no wonder that people are very excited about all the possibilities. And I think even though we aren't at the holodeck yet, and we're not at Montessori school in VR, it's important to think about and talk about the body and how we can design on it and for it. So this is Paul Milgram's virtual reality continuum. And I think we're getting to the place where we're going to be able to explore a lot of different places on the continuum. So what do we need to do? Well, when you're wearing a head-mounted display, obviously, the hands are very important. And there's a lot of work being done right now to figure out what those hands will be. Why are we obsessed with the hands? Anyone who's tried to work with VR knows that when you are in a space where you're experiencing reality and then you can't see your hands, you feel weird. It feels, what they call it is the rubber hand illusion. But the idea that there's a physical object and there's no response to it. Trespasser, the video game from many, many years ago, famous for this sort of disembodied hand problem. It's something that we've struggled with in just regular games. And now in VR, it's really important. And creating that sense of connection to the hands is something that you'll hear from a lot this conference, and I think in conferences to come as we develop the technology. Displaying the controller directly, having an abstract hand model, or showing the primary game object or tool or brush, whether that's a hammer, a gun, wand, whatever it is, or some combination of these seems to be super, super important, right, for engaging the body. And we only just got the ability to do this, so that's exciting. And if you look at games that are doing really well right now, that have hands in them, they're about touching stuff. They're about, being in the space and just like poke, 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 poke. Genova Chen, the designer of the new That Game Company game, which was just announced yesterday, used to say that when you're in an interactive virtual space and you're moving into it for the first time, whether it's like a VR experience or a classic video game experience, that you're like a baby, just pushing every surface, trying to see what happens. And these games really engage you that way. So, well, that's not news. What's interesting to me, and what's been interesting to me at Funomena, specifically as we work on this VR technology, is the difference between the power grip and the precision grip. So if you think about the controllers, I want you to put your hand out in front of you and make the gesture that you make when you grab a controller for VR. It's a power grip. It's a force grip. And when you make this grip with your arm, you put your hand out in front of yourself and you grab space. Like really do it. Like pretend you're a Wing Chun advocate and you're gonna do the 1-inch punch. When you do this motion, you engage your fist, your lower arm, your shoulder, your bicep, and your back muscles and your torso. The power grip has this effect of immediately stressing your body, and it raises your blood pressure and your heart rate. If you do it with force, if you really try to do it, you can actually engage all the muscles in your arm, and when you do a 1-inch punch in Wing Chun, you can really crack someone's skull really hard. I know, because I used to do it before I fucked up my shoulder. It's a very powerful tool, the power grip, and we use it all the time. When you swing an axe, when you punch somebody, when you do a really vicious dance move, you're using the power grip. Now, the other grip is the precision grip. So let's all do that. Precision grip. Let's pretend we're conducting. We'll pretend we're Austin Wintory, conducting the score for Journey, right? It's a very different feeling. What are you engaging when you engage the precision grip? Just your hand. Just a little bit maybe on the backside of your arm. If you really close your eyes and feel a power grip versus a precision grip, your body is telling you, this is action, this is thinking. Is it no surprise that what artists love is to have a tablet with a pen instead of a fucking mouse, right? That the relaxed pose of painting and drawing is a physical thing, and that the tool itself engages the mind in a way that's really insightful and has worked for thousands of years. So when you're using a power grip to do precision activities, how do you translate that body feedback? This is a question that all of us get to work on now. What is the feeling of painting when your fist is closed? It's not even finger painting. It's like punchy painting. And you could make it really kind of, I'm gonna just do this. But it kind of feels fucked up. Like it doesn't really feel right. When you open your hand, it feels much better. If you paint it with your hand open like this, and like this, it's just like a very different feeling. And really the whole point of the talk is that. So you can just get up and go get a drink now if you want, go to the bar. That's it, that's the only interesting data. This desire to create a sense of precision was something that was at the core of Luna when we started working on it. We actually started working on it not for VR, but for the Intel gesture sensing camera. And I really wanted to build a game where you could just touch the world with your fingers. It was my dream, right? And what this led to when we started to translate into touch for Luna was actually thinking about the precision grip as an effector of the power grip. And we actually, the very first prototype that Scott Anderson ever made was you would press the buttons and it was a little pair of chopsticks. And then you could just use these 2 pairs of chopsticks to pick up little things. So immediately with the capacitant buttons and the pressure, you started thinking delicately. So translate the power to something precise. We actually modeled and physically sculpted what we call the grasper for the game, which we would do this with. It's like dinosaur claws kind of, or bird claws. It's also like a lotus or a yoni. I mean, you can see a lot of things in it. This is the physical prototype that my art director, Glenn Hernandez, made. It's just some sculpted clay over some tinfoil. You can kind of see the tinfoil poking out there. And when you look at it in the game, the other thing that we decided to do was to de-emphasize the butt of the controller hand grasper thing and focus on the tips and to give it a brush-like quality. It's still not finished, it's a work in progress, but when it grasps, it becomes more of a pod. It becomes a little more solid in the tips, and then it opens again. So we've got this feeling. We really wanted to have this hand presence that would make you want to touch the world in a different way. And the reason, which you'll see at the end of the talk, is because people tend to punch things. But they maybe punch things because their hand is like this, right? So thinking about the way in which the hand is embodied has become a huge focus for me as a designer. And I think it's something that we haven't really had a lot of open discussions about. A hand model is helpful, but it may not translate the action the way that you want it to. Doing something a little bit more abstract may be nice. Now, the second question that you always sort of think about once you move past the hands is the actual embodiment itself. And you know, the best practice literature sort of states that, you know, hey, you want to put a body in there, that's great, except for that it can be pretty disturbing if the body isn't your body. This is from the Oculus Best Practices documentation. This talk, because it's a short talk, has all the links to everything I'm talking about in the bottom. So when you get the slides, you can just go through and click on all the links. This is a very interesting experiment that was done with body image and owning an underweight or an overweight body for people with eating disorders. Looking down and seeing the body that you actually have versus the body that you think you have, and then having a discussion with the therapist about it. Link to the paper in there as well. And what we're finding, right, is that the lack of realistic body IK conveys difference to us automatically, right? So again, like if you're gonna put a realistic body in and I'm moving around in the body, but it's doing unrealistic motions or it's not totally smooth, the elbow joints, the arms and all this other stuff are not responding the way that I want them to, I find it really difficult. This image is from a really interesting article on animation techniques at Ubisoft that I also linked in the talk. We've been seeing some interesting work on gesture and reaction and celebration in embodied avatars in social spaces. In this context, say I'm Lucy Bradshaw, I'm not going to be seeing myself this way, but I'm going to see them that way, right? I'm going to see my hands, but I'm going to see them. And so we're trying to kind of mix that space. And when you look at spectator view mode and the way that we're embracing this, it's also, we're trying to get as much out of the motion of the body without actually having to replicate the physics of it. So the body is back, sort of, when it comes to actual avatars. You get this and the hands, right? So for Halloween, I told you I was a fox spirit. It was a bike helmet with 2 horns and 2 giant masks of hair. So I just took 2 wigs and put it on the front and the back, and then I put a fox mask on it. And when I move, the antlers and the hair moves and my hands move, but it's up, my face is up here. So I have to, you know, kind of puppeteer. VR is a little bit like that right now. It's a little bit like, you get a lot out of this, but the rest of you is kind of invisible. So when you think about gestures and the body, doing this is pretty cool. How do you do a ninja-like movement if it's just your tiny little head and your hands? Like if I can't see the whole body and you're just seeing my hands and I'm trying to do ninja moves, what are you seeing, you know? Are we simulating the rest of that body? How do we perceive that? And specifically, if you're gonna wave your arms like a ballerina, you're just gonna see the tracers on my hands, right? Like, just for a minute, try to make a balletic movement with your arm, you know? Just kind of a, you know? If you're only tracking this part of the arm, really, you gotta have a lot of juicy feedback in there, right? And now do the ninja one, you know? Don't hit anybody in, you know, in the audience, but this is like, you know, it's really, if you just do it, you feel it. So this is a video of someone at PAX playing Luna. You can see the little grasper, and you can see her reaching up, right? That's a motion that I spend a lot of time thinking about right now. Reaching up. It feels so good to reach up. Catch a firefly, pop a bubble, point at the stars, look at an airplane, right? Airplane, airplane. Kids do it all the time. It's a great feeling. Eureka. This is another person playing a different mode of the game. They're decorating now. using a little palette, touching stuff, kind of cool. This person was completely lost in the experience. He played for like 25 minutes, way longer than he was supposed to. Pet the bird, going around doing stuff. You see, here, there's like a much more of like a smorgasbord of activities happening. It's like it's like almost like, you know, when you're at dim sum and you're like trying to pick which pickle you're gonna eat, or like, you know, are you gonna have a pork bun or a sesame bun? You know, just this kind of like feeling of smorgasbord is something else I think about a lot. Like little, like I have my Warhammer characters and my paint, and I'm like, you know, painting them up, and then I'm setting them up, and I'm letting them dry, and I'm thinking about the awesome Warhammer session I'm gonna have at the bookstore next week with my one friend. You know, not kidding, I'm kidding, I should nerd shame, that was terrible. But, you know, this idea of being able to use the body to create emotion is real. It is real. And when you look at VR as an effective medium, what you're talking about is not just the things you see, but it's all the stuff you're doing down here outside of the headset. And there are studies, this one is linked, effective interactions using virtual reality, that show that when you're in an anxious environment, like one of my play testers said, you know, I've only ever played one other VR experience. I said, what was that? She said, the one where the music attacks your face. That's an anxiety-provoking environment, and it makes people feel anxious. I asked her what Luna felt like, and she said it was meditative. I felt relaxed. In fact, I was kind of tired when I came in, and I feel better now. It's a smooth, calming experience. Just use smooth music, like go Kenny G. You're gonna get people in a different mind state than when they came into your experience. It's no secret that eye and face tracking is something that, like, you know, the sort of super geniuses in the community are talking about right now. I think as designers, we need to think a lot about it now as well. When the headset can track your face and can watch your micro expressions, it's better at knowing what you want than you are, and that's a risk. If you ever go to dinner and watch two people on a date, you know, and you watch the micro expressions that they're not catching because they're so busy trying to mask their own feelings, it's really scary to think about a computer that can do that for like lots of people, you know, as per Black Mirror, you know, affecting how you feel and how you think. And the other thing that's not a secret is that when you do a close-up, you feel emotional, you know. When you bring things into perspective with the person at like eye-to-eye level, person with character, suddenly your heart opens up and you feel like, you know, a whole new world, you know, that kind of thing. So this is traditional in the sense that it's basic film techniques, but when you bring it into VR and you move from perspective of like, here you are in the world, oh my God, now you're really first person, do it quick. It's just a hand, oh my God, the robot's coming. You know, Wayward Sky does a great job of this, playing between the two camera frames. Even though technically it's not a frame, it's an embodiment frame. So it's not about the camera frame anymore, it's about the body frame. And there's a lot of links on this slide about framing and shot sizes and stuff like that that you can check out later. So wrapping up, what I thought I would do is I would just show you a little bit of footage of Luna. Like, you know, I'm just gonna zip through some stuff that Polygon recorded when we just revealed the game at PAX, that sort of focus on these specific things that we were doing and have a conversation about that and then take a few questions. So flexible hand presence, this idea that the hand is present and then we have selective embodiment. You don't really see any other people in the space and you don't see the rest of your body. You feel like a pair of hands, and those hands don't feel real, and they're precision hands, which is, we're really trying to take you down into this feeling of just the tips of your fingers. Why? Because it's supposed to be delicate. And it's delicate because the emotional context of the game, which we talked about a few slides ago, is relaxing and calm, and I want you to stop poking and punching everything to see if it'll explode, and just like be and observe and listen so that you can get into a sense of oneness with the space and the characters in it. And then there's this deliberate adjustment of scale that we do to reframe the body. So I'm gonna escape out of this. Da-da-da-da. And then we're gonna go into here and we're gonna play it. Ooh, nope. Come on. There we go. So this is someone playing the game for the first time, and you can see them moving around, testing stuff. This is the first time they've ever experienced this puzzle gameplay. What do I grab? Ooh, this. Oh, it's stretchy. Feels good. Hey, relax. Take a look. What is it? Can I touch it? Not yet, that's not in the build yet. This is a whole demo. Petting the bird, just like checking it out, right? Another movement. This is all canned animation that was in the build before we actually decided to go full VR. It doesn't really work. You'll see the hands poking a little bit more often than they should. It's like a sense of patience because it's not actually physical, it feels fake. But these things don't feel fake. And yet, it's so hard to remember what the affordances are in this space. As soon as he does though, double-handed flourish, two-handed gameplay feels amazing in VR. It's like, you know, that guy with the glow sticks at the party. All right, so we're gonna skip ahead a little bit to a little bit more complicated puzzle. So you can't see the body now. What's he doing? He's playing with the space now. He's moved into it. And he gets faster and faster at solving the puzzles, right? And the feeling of this gameplay, I wasn't actually going to include it in the demos for PAX because I thought, it's not really ready yet. It's not perfect, you know, game designer anxiety. But when I drop people into the second part of the game without this experience, their embodiment concept was so at odds with where they needed to be that they had to go through these puzzles in order to get there. So even though they're relatively simple, almost like knitting, by the time they get to the end and discover this little turtle, the feeling is like, oh, it's so cute, right? Like they're really celebrating those moments. And I've actually been able to slow them down a little bit. Now it's not perfect. I feel there are many flaws in this game still. But now they're in this little space with the bird and they fully engage. The body, look at all the little motions. I didn't tell this person to do this. You can kind of see me hovering in the corner being like, don't fuck up, you're recording it. You know, this is literally the first time the game was ever recorded by press. But then as he was playing, I just kept feeling like, wow, it's really doing it. People want to be childlike. They want to lean in. They want to explore. It's not that hard to get them to relax if you just give them the opportunity to get past the poking. So my motto is less poking, more stroking. It's quotable. Someone please put that in the article. Maybe now I'll get horrible emails from the internet. Just the feeling of dropping stuff into a space, watching it, just like checking in, making sure you're there. So as we go through, find my cursor. Come back, cursor. Oh no, my cursor's decided not to work. Ah, there it is. There's a little bit in here where he's going to engage, hopefully. Work. Yeah. Some rocks. Just little small things. It's not perfect yet, but it encourages people to do this stuff. Poke, pick up, throw. Does it roll down the hill? No. Yes. This kind of stuff. There's just so many little dorky things you can do in a VR space that you don't normally do in 2D games anymore because we're just used to it. That feeling when you first played The Sims, you know, that feeling of that every little thing works. It's possible for us to build now, and the body is where it's at. Like, it's in the body itself. So in the game, what we actually do after you solve the puzzles, and then build the world back, is we put you in it. Take your hands away, right? So that you can't poke the bird, which is what people would do, see? They always try to poke it. But look at that motion. Just like when you're outside in nature. And of course here you have the benefit of having done it yourself, which is pretty fucking cool. So, to wrap it up, if I go back all the way to the slide that I was on, and then I say, slideshow, play from current slide. The encouraging thing that I can tell you is that we were not actually building this game in VR even a year ago, and it wasn't that hard to translate. We did translate 2D concepts and camera cuts to that space. And we were able to engage the body in a way that I think is interesting. So it's not as hard as you might think it is. And you can take a step out and do something interesting. And to that effect, I want everybody to stand up. Come on, it's almost the end. People on the left, you're gonna do this. We're gonna, right. You're gonna win. So you're gonna say, we're gonna win. All right, 1, 2, 3. We're gonna win, all right? And on this side, you just say, we won! Ready? 1, 2, 3. We won! All right, now you're gonna win. 1, 2, 3. We're gonna win! Ready? 1, 2, 3. We're gonna win! All right, and you? We won! 1, 2, 3. We won! Right? Okay, now everybody, as loud as you can, on the count of 3, celebrate. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Woo! All right, that's it. Done. So don't forget your body when you're designing. It's a very important tool. And I think maybe we have time for a question, maybe not. I'm going to say no questions. Come see me after the talk. Bye.